The morning was too still for how fast my pulse moved. Sunlight filtered through the narrow blinds of my small kitchen, striping the counter in pale gold. I had just poured my coffee when I saw her, standing on her porch across the narrow hedge, in that quiet, unhurried way she had. Evelyn. She wasn't doing anything remarkable, just tying back her hair, the silk of her robe catching a breeze. But something in the movement held me still. There was a calm to her, that effortless confidence that people twice my age still never learn. She looked like someone who'd seen every kind of storm and stopped fearing the rain. And then, she looked up. Just a glance. A beat too long. It was the kind of look that didn't belong in a quiet neighborhood on a Tuesday morning. I froze, halfway through lifting my mug. She didn't look away immediately. There was curiosity in her eyes, maybe even amusement, before she turned, slowly, toward the door. For some reason, I couldn't. The air outside was still, but something in me shifted. I caught myself watching her reflection in the window as she disappeared inside, her shadow cutting across the curtain. My breath came shallow, like I'd run somewhere I wasn't supposed to go. Evelyn had always been Mrs. Cole to me. The neighbor who waved politely, who brought in my mail when I forgot, who smiled with that measured kindness that left no room for questions. Her husband was often away. Business, she once said, with a faint shrug that didn't invite more. I told myself it was just a look. People make eye contact. Neighbors say hello. But when I stepped outside, the smell of her perfume lingered faintly in the air, warm, like jasmine, mixed with coffee. I don't know if it came from her, or if I imagined it. I saw her again an hour later, at the fence between our yards. She was trimming a rose bush, her hair falling out of its clip. When she noticed me, she smiled, soft, a little knowing. "Morning," she said. Her voice was low, unhurried. "Morning." I managed, though my throat felt dry. "You're up early for once." I laughed awkwardly, trying to be an adult. That earned me a quiet chuckle. She looked back down at the flowers, the corner of her mouth still curved. "It's overrated." Her hand slipped, and a thorn caught her finger. She winced, barely flinching, but I was already stepping closer. "You okay?" "It's fine," she murmured. A drop of red welled at the edge of her nail. "Here." I offered her a napkin from my pocket, crumbled from the cafe near campus. She took it, our fingers brushing for half a second too long. It wasn't intentional. Not really. But the world narrowed around that touch. The hum of a passing car, the wind moving through the hedge, everything distant and muted. She withdrew her hand, careful, composed again. "Thank you," she said, voice steadier than mine. I nodded, pretending to focus on the roses. "They're beautiful." "They're a mess," she said. "But I keep them anyway." There was a pause that neither of us filled. Somewhere, a door slammed down the street, startling a bird from the fence. She followed it with her eyes, and I followed her. She looked back at me once more, different this time. Less neighborly. More like someone deciding whether to open a door they shouldn't. Then her phone buzzed on the table beside her. She looked at the screen, the faintest sigh leaving her lips. "I should go," she said softly. "Yeah," I murmured. But she didn't move right away. For a moment, it felt like the space between us wasn't air at all, just a quiet, electric pull neither of us had the right to name. Then she turned, walking back toward her porch. The phone still buzzed, and I stood there, the morning suddenly too bright, realizing that nothing would be the same after the way she'd just looked at me. It had been 3 days since that morning, and I'd caught myself checking the window more times than I wanted to admit. The hedge between our yards suddenly felt thinner, like it could no longer separate what had quietly started to shift. I told myself it was nothing, just curiosity. But curiosity doesn't make your chest tighten when you hear someone laugh next door. That Saturday, I saw her again. Evelyn was sitting on her back porch, barefoot, a book open on her lap. The late afternoon light spilled over her shoulders, catching in her hair. I almost turned away, but she looked up. "Hey, stranger," she said, smiling faintly. "You disappeared." I walked over, pretending confidence I didn't feel. "Just been busy." "With life?" she teased. Something like that. Her laugh was quiet, soft enough that I almost missed it. She closed her book, marking the page with her finger. "You remind me of someone I used to know. My husband when he was your age. He thought he had everything figured out, too." There was no bitterness in her tone, just a kind of wistful honesty. I hesitated before asking, "You two met young?" "Too young." she said, looking past me toward the street. He grew up faster than I did. Or maybe I just stopped keeping up. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of her perfume again. Light, floral, distracting. Do you miss him? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. Sometimes. In the way you miss a place you can't live in anymore. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, thoughtful. She took a slow sip of her wine, then set the glass down. What about you? Is anyone waiting for you somewhere? I laughed softly. No one serious. I don't stay long enough for that. She smiled, small, knowing. That's the trick, isn't it? Leave before it gets complicated. Doesn't always work, I said quietly. Evelyn looked at me then, and something in her expression shifted, like she'd just realized how close we were standing. Neither of us stepped back. I noticed the faint lines near her eyes when she smiled, the kind that come from both laughter and loss. She noticed the, you all. She laughed softly at something he said, the sound brittle, careful. When the door closed again, she didn't look at me right away. She just leaned back against it, eyes closed, breathing like she'd been running. Neither of us spoke. The rain grew heavier outside, and when she finally opened her eyes, that same look from the morning was there again, but now it carried something else. Fear. Unspoken, trembling, beautiful fear. The next few days were quiet, almost too quiet. She didn't wave when I passed her in the driveway. No texts. No excuses to ask about the mail or the roses. Just silence, like the space between us had turned into glass. But I couldn't stop seeing that look from the night her husband came home. The one that said we went too far even without touching. It rained again 3 nights later. I saw her light on through the slats of my blinds, flickering against the storm. Before I could stop myself, I was already outside, half soaked before reaching her porch. She opened the door before I even knocked. Maybe she'd been waiting. Are you out of your mind? She whispered, pulling me inside by the sleeve. Someone could see you. Then close the curtains, I said, and regretted it the second it left my mouth. Her eyes flashed, not with anger, exactly, but with something that felt dangerously close to wanting. She exhaled slow. You shouldn't be here. I know. Then why come? I couldn't find an answer that sounded like sense. For a moment, the only sound was rain against the windows and the low hum of the fridge. Her robe sleeves were rolled up, her hair loose again. It always was when she wasn't pretending to be anyone's wife. I saw your light, I said finally. That's all. Her laugh was quiet, sad. You make it sound like that's enough. It is. She looked away, but not fast enough. Her hand tightened around the edge of the counter, knuckles pale. You're a boy, she whispered. You don't know what this could cost. I'm not a boy, I said, and neither of us is pretending anymore. Something in her stilled. When she turned, she was close enough that I could feel the warmth of her skin. A strand of hair fell forward, brushing against my wrist. I didn't move. Neither did she. You think you want this, she said, voice barely audible. Tell me I don't, I murmured. Her breath hitched. For a moment, I thought she might actually say it, that she'd draw the line, close the door, make it easy. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped closer, so close that her perfume and the rain on her skin were indistinguishable. Her hand lifted, almost touching my face, almost, before stopping midair, trembling. This can't happen, she whispered. It already is. Her eyes met mine, and this time, she didn't look away. Everything in that gaze was a contradiction. Fear, want, guilt, something breaking open. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, a slow, aching sound that filled the silence between us. I could see her deciding. She leaned in, just a fraction, close enough that her hair brushed my cheek. Her breath touched my lips. And then she stopped. The sound of her husband's car pulling into the driveway shattered the air. She froze, her hand still hovering near my face. Neither of us breathed. Headlights flashed through the rain across the living room wall. Go, she whispered, her voice shaking for the first time. I didn't move. Please. Her plea hung in the air, fragile and final. I turned toward the back door, heart pounding, rain spilling inside as I slipped out. Her scent, her voice, and the almost that would never stop echoing that I didn't see her for nearly a week after that night. No porch light. No sound of her laugh through the hedge. Just silence thick enough to make me doubt the whole thing had even happened. Then, late one evening, she knocked. 3 soft taps, hesitant, almost apologetic. When I opened the door, she stood there without her usual calm. Her coat was buttoned wrong, her eyes red-rimmed like she hadn't slept. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. The air between us was tighter than ever. She didn't sit, just stood by the counter, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. I could smell her perfume faintly under the scent of rain. Lighter this time, like she'd almost forgotten to wear it. "I shouldn't be here," she said, voice raw. "You already said that last time. This is different." She handed me a folded envelope. My name was written on it, careful and elegant. "I found this in our mailbox," she said. "It's not in your handwriting, is it?" I opened it. A single photo. The shot was grainy, taken through a window. Me, standing in her kitchen. Her, reaching up, her hand almost on my face. The air left my chest. "Who?" "I don't know," she said quickly, but her eyes darted. Too fast, too guilty. "Evelyn." She swallowed hard. "I think my husband knows." The words barely made it out of her mouth. "He came home early last week. He said, someone saw me talking to you. He asked if you'd been helping with the roses again." "And what did you say?" She gave a small, broken laugh. "That I didn't even remember what color the roses were." We both went quiet. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, the branches tapping like someone knocking to be let in. "You need to stay away," she said. "For both of us." I tried to nod, but my hands betrayed me, clenched tight on the edge of the table. She noticed. Her gaze softened, but she didn't move. Not at first. Then she stepped closer, like gravity refused to let her keep her distance. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "Then why are you here?" Her breath hitched. "Because I wanted to see if I could still lie to myself." Her words hit harder than the photo in my hand. For a moment, neither of us breathed. She reached out, just one trembling hand, fingers brushing the back of mine. Not a touch of comfort, but confession. "You should hate me," she murmured. I tried. Her lips parted, maybe to apologize, maybe to say something that could make this less impossible. And then her phone lit up on the counter. A message previewed across the screen. From Daniel. "We need to talk about him." Her hand slipped from mine. The color drained from her face. Outside, thunder cracked, sharp and close. Inside, neither of us moved, suspended between fear and the one thing we could no longer deny. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. It came down in waves, soft one moment, furious the next, like it couldn't decide what it wanted to wash away. I hadn't heard from her since that night, but I couldn't stop thinking about the message on her phone, the look in her eyes when she saw it. Fear, guilt, and something else that shouldn't have survived inside it. Want. Then, just before midnight, there was a knock on my door. I didn't need to look to know it was her. When I opened it, Evelyn stood there, soaked, hair sticking to her face, coat half off her shoulders. "He knows," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. "He saw the photo. He said he's staying with his brother for a while." My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said quietly, "that I don't have to lie anymore." The air between us went still. I stepped back, and she walked in. Water pooled at her feet, the scent of rain and her skin filling the room. She looked around like she'd crossed into another world, one she'd been circling for too long. "I tried," she said softly. "I tried to end this before it began. I didn't move. And now," she met my eyes, "now I don't want to." There wasn't a single dramatic word after that. Just silence, heavy alive. She took a step forward, then another, until the hem of her coat brushed against my leg. My hands twitched, useless at my sides. Her fingers found my wrist, tracing it slowly, like she was memorizing the moment before everything changed. "You make me feel," she whispered, "like I'm still allowed to want something." Her confession was quiet, but it felt like thunder. I reached up without thinking, brushing the wet strands of hair from her face. She didn't pull away. Her breath caught, the kind of breath that happens when someone finally stops pretending. Our foreheads almost touched. The world narrowed to warmth, heartbeat, rain. "Evelyn," I said, her name like a warning and a promise in the same breath. She smiled faintly, eyes glistening. "You always say my name like it's a secret." "Maybe it is." Her lips parted, not in surprise, but surrender. And then, she stopped. Her hand moved to my chest, resting there, firm. "If I do this," she said, "I lose everything I built trying to be the right kind of woman." I covered her hand with mine. "Maybe that's not who you are anymore." A pause. Long, trembling, human. She looked at me like she was memorizing my face. The corners of it, the breath between us, the truth she'd been avoiding since that first morning. Then she leaned in, her voice barely audible against my skin. Then let this be the last lie. Whether she meant the end of her restraint or the start of something we couldn't undo, I didn't know. Her lips hovered close enough for me to taste the word she didn't say. The rain hit harder against the windows. And just as she closed her eyes, the sound of a car door outside broke through the storm. She froze. Neither of us turned to look. We just stayed there, hearts still touching, suspended between what we'd chosen and what was about to find us. Morning came slow. The storm had passed, leaving the street washed clean, the world too bright for everything that had happened. Evelyn stood by the window, wrapped in a blanket, her hair still damp from the night before. The sky behind her was pale blue, the kind that always feels like a beginning pretending to be an ending. Neither of us had spoken much after the car door slammed. Whoever had come, maybe her husband, maybe no one at all, never knocked. Maybe fate had given us mercy in the smallest way it could. Now, she just stood there, quiet, tracing circles on the fogged glass with her fingertip. "You should hate mornings like this," I said softly. She smiled, faintly. "I used to. Too honest. No shadows to hide in." I stepped closer, close enough to see the way her shoulders eased when she felt me behind her. The light touched her face, revealing the exhaustion, the peace, the decision. "What happens now?" I asked. She took a slow breath. "I told him the truth," she said. "All of it, except this morning." Her voice wavered at the end. "He's gone. He said he doesn't want to see me until I decide who I am without him." "And who are you?" She turned then, really turned, and looked at me with that same gaze that had undone me since the first morning. Only now, there was no hesitation in it. "Someone who's tired of being afraid of what she feels," she said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her hand found mine, fingers cold from the window pane, but they fit, like something inevitable. She leaned her forehead against my chest, eyes closed. The silence between us was soft this time, no longer heavy. "This doesn't have to be forever," she whispered. "Maybe it's just real for now." "Real's enough," I said. She smiled, small, almost invisible. Then she reached up and pressed her lips, just once, against my forehead. Not a kiss of victory, a kiss of truth. When she pulled away, her eyes glistened. "You should go before the neighbors start asking questions." I laughed quietly. They already do. We both did, laugh, softly, like two people who'd finally stopped fighting something that was never about right or wrong, just timing. She followed me to the door. The air outside smelled of wet earth and something clean, something possible. Before I stepped out, she caught my sleeve. "If this is the last time I see you," she said, "remember I looked at you first that morning, not by accident." "I remember everything," I said. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she let go, slow and certain. I walked out into the bright quiet, the world unchanged, except for the heartbeat that still echoed like her name. Did you enjoy the story? If you did, tell me what kind of stories you'd like to hear next. Dizzy slow burn romance, cloud with rain emotional forbidden love, fire second chances and near misses. Your story begins with a single glance. Which one should I write next?